the annals of music history, few stories resonate as deeply as the unexpected encounter between Michael Jackson, the undisputed king of pop, and Harold Morrison, one of America's most feared and relentless music critics. This meeting, which took place on a seemingly ordinary Tuesday afternoon in March 1987, would not only alter the course of their individual lives, but also send ripples throughout the entire music industry. It is a tale of confrontation, vulnerability, and ultimately mutual respect, a testament to the transformative power of human connection and open dialogue. Harold Morrison was a man who wielded words like a sword. As the senior music critic for Rolling Stone magazine, his reviews were known to be brutally honest, often merciless, and capable of making or breaking the careers of musicians. Over the years, Morrison had built a reputation for his fearless critiques, never hesitating to call out what he perceived as flaws or pretenses in the music world. Yet, among all the artists he had reviewed, there was one who had become the particular focus of his scathing pen: Michael Jackson. Since the release of Thriller in 1982, Morrison had been openly critical of Jackson's work. He dismissed the album as a slick commercial product that prioritized style over substance, marketing over artistry, and image over authenticity. To Morrison, Michael Jackson was the embodiment of everything wrong with the music industry: a manufactured pop star whose music lacked genuine soul and artistic depth. His reviews were not just professional critiques, they were personal attacks that questioned Jackson's legitimacy as an artist. On the morning of March 17, 1987, Morrison was informed by his editor that he was to conduct an interview with the legendary producer Quincy Jones at Westlake Recording Studios. The assignment was ostensibly about Jones's latest jazz projects, but what Morrison did not know was that Jones was currently working on Michael Jackson's highly anticipated follow-up album to Thriller. Morrison had no inkling that this day would become the most pivotal of his career. As Morrison arrived at Westlake Studios, he was led to Studio A, expecting to find Quincy Jones waiting for him. Instead, when the door opened, he found himself face to face with Michael Jackson himself. The king of pop was seated alone at a piano, quietly working on a melody that would later become the iconic song Man in the Mirror. The atmosphere was thick with tension. Both men recognized each other instantly. Michael knew exactly who Harold Morrison was, the critic who had spent years disparaging his work. Morrison, in turn, realized he had walked into what could be the most uncomfortable and awkward encounter of his professional life. For several moments neither spoke. Michael's fingers hovered over the piano keys, while Morrison stood frozen in the doorway, clutching his notebook and recorder. The room seemed charged with the weight of 5 years of professional antagonism and misunderstanding. Finally, Michael broke the silence with a calm and gentle voice. "Mr. Morrison," he said, "I know who you are." Morrison's throat went dry. He stammered, "Mr. Jackson, I was looking for Quincy." "I didn't know you were here." Michael explained that Quincy was upstairs in a meeting and invited Morrison to stay and talk. There was no sarcasm or hostility in his tone, only a sincere invitation. This moment of grace was the first crack in Morrison's hardened preconceptions. Accepting the invitation, Morrison took a seat across from Michael. What followed was a conversation that lasted over 4 hours and would profoundly change both men. Michael began by addressing Morrison's criticisms head-on. "In your reviews, you said my music lacks soul, that it's all manufactured," he said softly. "I'm not angry about it. I just want to understand what you mean by that." Morrison expected defensiveness or anger, but was met instead with genuine curiosity. He explained that he had always felt Michael's music was too polished, too produced, calculated rather than spontaneous. To him, great art should emerge from struggle and authentic emotion, not from meticulous production. Michael listened thoughtfully and then offered to show Morrison something. He moved back to the piano and played a simple, raw melody. an early, stripped-down version of Man in the Mirror. This was not the polished hit that would later top charts worldwide, but a vulnerable, haunting rendition with sparse piano and a voice breaking slightly on certain notes. As Michael sang about self-reflection and change, Morrison heard something he had never noticed in the finished recordings: raw emotion and authentic artistry at the core of the music. "This is where it starts," Michael said quietly. "Everything begins here, with just me and the music. The production, the arrangements, all of that comes later. But the heart of it, the thing you say isn't there, starts right here." Morrison sat in stunned silence. In just a few minutes, Michael had revealed a side of his artistry that 5 years of listening to albums had failed to show. Michael then explained the creative process behind his music. He described how every song went through dozens of versions, hundreds of decisions, and thousands of small choices. The production was not a mask hiding the art, but a tool serving it. He asked Morrison a question that would linger in his mind. "Do you think Beethoven's symphonies are less authentic because he wrote them for full orchestras instead of just playing them on a single piano? Is the arrangement and production of those pieces somehow betraying the original musical idea?" Morrison had no answer. He was beginning to realize that his framework for judging Michael's music was flawed. For the next hour, Michael played rough demos, explained his arrangement choices, and demonstrated how he built songs from simple melodies into complex productions. Morrison saw the meticulous craftsmanship behind what he had previously dismissed as overproduction. The conversation then turned personal. Michael spoke about his childhood, growing up in the spotlight, and the pressures that shaped his life and art. Morrison saw beyond the public persona to the vulnerable, thoughtful person beneath. "You've written that I'm manufactured," Michael said quietly. "But I need you to understand something. I've been making music since I was 5 years old. Nobody manufactured that. Nobody taught me to love music or showed me how to hear melodies in my head. That came from somewhere else, somewhere deeper." As Michael shared stories of hearing rhythms in everyday sounds and melodies in conversations, Morrison began to understand that he had been dismissing one of the most naturally gifted artists of his generation as artificial. Michael suggested that Morrison might have confused accessibility with lack of depth. Just because millions of people can connect with a song doesn't mean it's not art. Maybe it means it's better art, art that speaks to people across all boundaries. This insight struck Morrison like a physical blow. His critical philosophy had been rooted in elitism, the belief that great art should be difficult, challenging, and accessible only to sophisticated listeners. Michael was proposing the opposite, that the greatest art could be both accessible and profound. As the afternoon wore on, Morrison shared his own background, musical education, and critical philosophy. Michael listened with genuine interest, asking thoughtful questions and revealing a deep understanding of music history and theory. "I think we both love music," Michael said. "We just have different ideas about how it should reach people. You believe great art should challenge people to rise up to it. I believe great art should meet people where they are and then lift them up." Morrison later said this sentence changed his entire understanding of popular music. Michael's approach was not a compromise or sellout, but a different, equally valid artistic philosophy. The most transformative moment came when Michael played Morrison a song that had never been released, a deeply personal piece about the loneliness of fame and the search for authentic human connection. The song was raw, emotional, and heartbreakingly honest. "Why haven't you released this?" Morrison asked, genuinely moved. Michael smiled sadly. "Because critics like you would probably say it's too self-pitying or manipulative. And maybe you'd be right. But sometimes I write songs just for me, to work through my feelings. Not everything has to be for public consumption." In that moment, Morrison realized he had spent years criticizing an artist without ever trying to understand him as a human being. He had reduced Michael to marketing strategies and production techniques, never considering the person behind the music. When Quincy Jones finally arrived, he found Michael and Morrison deep in conversation about music theory, artistic integrity, and the responsibility of artists to their audiences. The interview with Quincy became secondary to the relationship Morrison was building with Michael. As the evening drew to a close, Morrison felt compelled to apologize. "Michael, I owe you an apology, not just for specific reviews, but for approaching your work with such a closed mind. I made assumptions that were unfair and uninformed." Michael's response was gracious. "You don't owe me an apology, Harold. You were doing your job as you understood it, but maybe now you understand it differently." Morrison left Westlake Studios a changed man. The 4-hour conversation had not only altered his opinion of Michael Jackson, but fundamentally shifted his approach to music criticism. 2 weeks later, Rolling Stone published an unprecedented article by Morrison titled, "I Was Wrong About Michael Jackson." In it, he detailed his conversation with Michael and his complete reassessment of the artist's work. "I have spent 5 years criticizing